And welcome to this week's Q&A live stream. I'm your host, Mod Gambit, and joining me this week are Mod Oasis.
Hello.
Mod Tide.
Hello there.
And Mod Ash.
Hello.
I hope you guys are having a wonderful week. Not too many announcements to go through before we head to the questions, but I did want to shout out about a community achievement which occurred earlier this week. I have a picture to announce this. It's obviously big news. A lot of you will probably have heard about this. Of course, Exact and Rendy have both achieved level 3 fire capes. Ooh. Which is obviously a monumental achievement. Probably not something we predicted would happen ever, frankly. Well, until quite recently, I suppose, when these competitions, these sort of race to the bottom started. So congrats to both of those guys. I think sort of as a gentleman's agreement, they decided to announce both of their achievements at the same time, which was, of course, very nice. So well done, you guys.
Jolly good form.
Sorry, yeah, reading through my notes here. In terms of what's happening next week, I wanted to give a heads up. We're having a stream for the Nightmare of Ashihama. The dev team who are working on the boss will be talking about its development, showing off some graphics, possibly some audio. I don't think that's confirmed though. And just generally, yeah, talking about the boss. So I haven't included questions about it specifically in this week. I'll pass it over to those guys. If they're not able to answer them because they're too busy telling you about all the other exciting stuff, we might have a FAQ thrown up or something like that. So that will be in place of the Q&A. And also wanted to let you guys know, I think I sent out a reminder, well, mentioned a reminder last week, but if you haven't already, sign up to our mailing list to get exclusive looks at, well, information about the Nightmare boss and various other things. To do that, it's your email and communication preferences that need to be adjusted via your account settings via the website. So please do that and stay in the loop. In terms of the update this week, the Twisted League is closing, so we're in sort of the final hours of the first league season, which is obviously very exciting if you're trying to complete your last few tasks, grind away for the last few hours and rack up those points. Ash, would you like to talk us through exactly what's going to happen tomorrow with the timings and that sort of thing? I think we had a reminder from Husky last week, but just to reiterate.
At 8:30 AM, Universal Time Clock, so that's British time, a countdown will begin for 30 minutes. At 9 o'clock, the countdown will end and the League Worlds will close. That will be the end of the league. The game update will follow around lunchtime like it usually does, with its usual 30-minute countdown. This allows the devs time to make sure they've got the latest data out of the League Worlds after they've closed, to set the thresholds for people's tiers, so that when the game update comes out around lunchtime, the shop's got the right stuff in it at the right points. That's about it, really.
Cool. Yes, that's what you can expect. Don't panic if you see the time early. That's the reason.
And if you see it on worlds that aren't League Worlds, it means I typed on the wrong box by mistake. I'll try and avoid that.
So yeah, of course, the Twisted League shop is being added as I think the sort of main thing in next week's update. Sorry, this week's update tomorrow. I have a couple of other things that are coming. So teleports from the Arceus Spellbook, and I think a couple others are being added to the Portal Nexus.
That's your work, so would you like to talk about it? Including the other things you did, maybe.
If I can remember those. But with the Portal Nexus, all of the Arceus spells are being added to the Portal Nexus, apart from the respawn teleport, because that doesn't have a tablet as well as they are being added to the Portal Room. And you can also chuck them out from the Magical Cage as well, if you want to.
I believe you fixed some scroll bar issues while you were in there.
Yes, so when you switch from scrying to teleport, the scroll bar would stay in the same place, but your teleports would jump around, but that's now fixed. And I can't remember the other thing I fixed as well.
Did it involve a duplicate op on something?
Oh yes, there was a dead op on one of the buttons, which is now being removed, so it shouldn't go out of sync as much.
Is it creepy that I've been monitoring your work that much?
No, it's quite flattering, actually.
Monka S. For the teleports, do they cost the same, well, the usual price?
For the Nexus, I believe it's 1,000 times what it's, well, 1,000 teleports, and then for the portal room, it's 100.
Okay.
But you don't need none of that dense rock here.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. We also have 2 quest items which will now be reobtainable after their respective quests.
Yeah, Violdi's dagger and the and Surviving Sword, for those who want them for the Fashionscape. Once you've done the quests in question, you can go back to Sir Radimus Urkel and get copies of Violdi's dagger off of him. And if you, well, technically it's Eknig-Zekken's dagger, I suppose, but it's the Violdi dagger. And in the case of the Palladian sword that Surviving owns, you'd go back to Thurgo and take him another bluerite ore and a couple of iron bars to get another one made.
Cool. Yeah, previously, some of you saying you could already do this. No, it's just been so long since you did Night Sword and dropped the thing to keep it.
In RS3, one would go back to the caves where Violdi's found and smash the barrels to get the dagger from those. I believe we chose not to go with that approach for Old School, but for Surviving Sword, you could already have lots of them by just dropping on the ground and getting free ones during the quest. But for people who didn't do that, we don't mind letting them for the Fashionscape.
We also have an update for the Bruma Torch. I think this one's been requested a lot.
Tired again?
Yep, you can now use that on your brazier as well as smoke some traps with it.
On your brassiere?
Brazier.
Oh, brazier.
Brazier.
I mean, if you want.
Oh no. My poor English.
Just wondering what we've put in the game.
I think there are some other smaller changes as well going in. I won't list them all, but I think a couple of the very notable ones include the Imbued Heart will be usable with the bank interface open, following last week's update to functions with the bank interface open.
Yeah, because we did it for food, we did it for potions, and the Imbued Heart isn't really either of them, but it's so similar to them that we'll let you have that one.
And Discs of Returning. Would you like to... Is that happening this week?
Yes, I'm not quite sure who passed on that request, but
Okay.
It used to be made available for the midsummer events, which we stopped doing a while back. And since it's actually got uses, like the blackout feature that people use for getting better screenshots and video capture, we'd like it to be available again. And since we don't have any plans to put it on a repeating holiday event like that, it's going in Django's store, but not at a trivial price. It's based on what people have been selling it for in the GE, so that people who've spent a lot from them can perhaps continue doing so, because it's not getting cheaper as such.
Okay, like I say, lots of other smaller changes as well to be seen tomorrow, but those are the main ones you can expect.
You missed a really important one, actually, Bruce.
There is. I know exactly what you're talking about as well. I'll let you tell them.
So sadly, after some discussion in the team and feedback from the community, we've added back the shoe option to the dog in Varrock. So it'll be the standard left click, but don't worry, you can still pet the dog. That is a second option, so you can both pet and shoe the dog at the same time. So don't worry, just something you guys need to know.
I like what you're doing with your feet there. You two.
Oh, we both just
Facing each other, twitching a little.
fusion.
It looks very sweet. I thought you were doing this on purpose to troll him.
One high shoe.
Well, he was talking about a shoe option.
Okay, I will move on to the questions you guys have sent in then. I think I forgot to mention at the beginning that we have Mod Sween behind the scenes as well. Sorry, Mod Sween, he'll be taking your questions in the chat, so if you have any you'd like asked towards the end, please send them into at Old School RS, and we'll get through as many as we can. We also have, of course, our lovely producer Mod John behind the scenes, as is usually the case. So in terms of questions you guys have sent in beforehand, the first I have here is, when can we expect the Phoenix Pet Recolours? You guys have been asking about this one quite heavily, especially since last week's update when we started on the changes from our last poll. Do we have any news about this, guys?
Maybe.
maybe.
I think we also have.
Possibly.
I thought you'd been preparing to talk about this.
That's for dramatic effect.
Oh, I'm
But,
sorry.
would you like to talk about this maybe a little bit more?
Yeah, right. So I posted a teaser on Twitter for the white recolor of the Phoenix. Now, I think we can show off all of the recolors.
We have a picture prepared.
Of Rendy.
Of Rendy,
Rendy
and
and
Exact. So here we have all the new recolors of the Phoenix, obviously starting with the original orange one in the top corner. And then we have the white one, which has been slightly redesigned from what I posted on Twitter a few days ago. It's been made a bit brighter. In the middle, we have purple, which is the best color, obviously, in terms of tier list, sorry. And then we have the blue and the green one. So in terms of functionality, the colors were taken from the Gnomish Firelighters, which are, red, blue, green, yellow, red, blue, green, white and purple. It takes 250 of each lighter per recolor for now. That's kind of open to changes, see how it goes. So I see a few people saying it is orange, but you use the red firelighter to recolor it to the orange version. It's kind of just a nice way to keep the Gnomish Firelighters in use without having to use an outside object that's not a firelighter to change it back to orange, which would be pretty similar to a red recolor, I think.
So no cleaning cloth.
No cleaning cloth for now. But yeah, 250 of each lighter to recolor it to that color. And those of you who've stocked up on the actual Gnomish firelighter that holds charges, if you put your firelighters inside of there, you can use that on the Phoenix and it'll recolor it as well. So yeah, just post in chat which color you say is best. Obviously, if you say anything other than purple, you're wrong, but yeah, fair enough.
Blue boy, look at it.
Purple gang, I think. Yeah.
No.
Am I right?
Just straw poll it. Be nice.
Straw poll.
If the screen has the means from behind the screen. Yeah, just to clarify the bit where you said about 250 firelighters. So we are sort of considering, I know you guys have said in feedback that maybe asking you to use another 250 each time you want to go back to a colour is a bit too harsh. So to instead have it that once you've used 250 of a given colour on the Phoenix, you've then unlocked that colour and can switch back to it for free later. That's something we are discussing.
Disgusting.
Is that what I said?
It sounded like
Is
it.
that what you heard?
idea already?
We're discussing it.
It's because you heard there was a purple one, that's why.
Moving on then, so our next suggestion is, could we add a personal damage counter to Zolcano? I think this is just so you can more easily track how much damage you've done to the boss and if you're likely to get a better drop.
Don't see why not. The Corp managed it, and it's not much different for her cave.
Okay.
Although we could talk about hit splats.
Yes, so conveniently there was a question about hit splats, which I thought I would put right after this one as a nice little segue. It says,
for goodness sake, asked about it, otherwise we'd never get to talk about it.
it says, when Ash's tinted hit splats update is added, could max hits appear in gold? I think that's just a chance to also talk about hit splats generally.
So, unfortunately, that is an entirely separate project rather than the one that we actually offered and have done. And no, I'm afraid that fairly large feature is not going to suddenly turn up in it. In much the same way that when we set out to write a troll quest, you don't suddenly get a new dwarf series along with it. It's just a separate project for another time. But I did leave the code able to handle more things like that. Also, the possibility of changing your hit splat based on the combat style used, so that perhaps magic, melee, range could show differently to each other. Probably not colours, because you go too far with that, you end up making it awkward for colourblind people, and it stops necessarily looking like what the blue and the red that people are used to in the first place. But there should be room for a little bit of a skill icon on the corner of the splat. They're quite a few pixels, those things. Anywho, yeah, I've heard this was a pretty big project in itself. We've not tried to bundle in all the other possibilities at the same time, but they should remain possible.
Okay.
Without engine work.
That's always nice to hear.
It makes quite a difference because we polled this thing in like 2015 or something, and Ian Gower, no longer working here sadly, he was in the engine team at the time, and he started working on what we needed for it. Then he quit. So it must be 2016 actually we're talking. Anywho, he quit and wasn't able to finish the job, and then none of them were available to take over because the studio was focusing more on the mobile version of the game than on different coloured hit splats. But finally Mod Atlas did the rest of what was necessary for it. He also has left, but he gave us this, and working alongside some fancy hits, some actual hit splat display code that Ian wrote before he left, we've been able to use their work together to finally deliver this thing into QA. I do not envy the QA tester who's going to be going through all the custom combat situations in the game, because there was like 300 bits that needed editing for this. It's a bit weird why you have to do it, but it's because normally the previous code that applies damage to an NPC would just send a number and when to make it appear, but no other info. But now it needs to know in that code who did it so that they can see a different splat to everyone else, if they've toggled it on. So that code needed to be able to know who the player was as well as just the number and the duration. That was a fairly substantial change that to the engine to let us pass that kind of info into NPC's pending code. They eventually did it for us, and we're very grateful because it's been quite handy. And this isn't the only thing we've been able to do with it. To the various players who've said, does this mean Group Iron Man is happening because look, you got an engine update? Worth noting that the engine team finished this one a while back, and the hold-up's actually been that we didn't get to have the resources for it ourselves to use their updates to deliver it. I'm afraid this is just one of those things we do that isn't Group Iron Man. However, for those who've been asking about that in the chat, we do expect to work on that, but first we want to do the clan system that we promised at the same time. The reason we promised we want to do the clan system first is that Group Iron Man would be built out of the clan system's infrastructure, so we can't actually do it the other way around, even if more people actually ask about that one. But certainly the plan is to do it, and I've had a look at what the engine team's working on. They are making more progress, but it's a darn long way to go because this is a big deal we're asking for. I think that's enough for me on this.
Thank you. On the topic of the clan system, our next question is, while we're waiting for the clan system, would it be possible to implement a board where clans could advertise themselves? Don't know who's best placed to answer this. I think my immediate reaction would be it's probably best to actually wait until the clan system happens and then implement all of that together anyway.
We'd very much like clans to be able to do that. Same goes for a bit of shared storage for key items, but we cannot promise it at this point, sorry.
Could the combat dummy in the POH also act as a draconic creature for testing the max hits of various Dragonbane weapons? This could be unlocked by using a Vorkath head on it to give the Vorkath heads an extra use.
I like that idea actually. Could be a cool looking dummy.
Be nice and blue.
Oh, you mean actually like plonk the thing on top of it?
Yeah, because it's got the Slayer mask on it for now. I can't
Yeah, you've got black
K4
masks on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
Imagine just fighting a nice big blue dummy with a Vorkath helmet.
Like you make it undead with one thing, you make it a black mask thing with the other thing, and now I guess we'd have yet more combinations if you stick Vorkath's head up it as well.
I suppose the next thing players would ask for is the Cowfight Queen so that they can test Keris on it as well. Get all sorts of variations at that
For
point.
the players who really, really want to test that Keris, yes.
So it sounds like not against this one. I suppose it makes sense if you want to test out the lance and such.
It's a legit thing to want.
What does the team think about making low-level javelins usable for low-level players? Now, this was a suggestion by a user called Lunch Guy on Reddit, and I have an image I would like to show everybody. Not that
We
one,
do
we've
like that
seen that,
one.
although it is a very nice image.
Rendy?
This one. I don't know if we can read from the sofa, but the TLDR is ancient societies would use this lever type thing to yeet javelins at other people or animals and such. And and that's the premise. So because the lower level javelins don't really get used, obviously you can't use them until you've got the light ballista at best, which is 65 ranged, I think. That makes all the lower ones like bronze, iron, etc. not very, well, they don't have much of a point, basically. And if we offered this, we could obviously balance the power of the javelins, the lower end javelins around it, and give them a use. What do we reckon to this? It's called an atlatl, I think. That's the best attempt I've got.
I think it'd be a bit weird if you could wield some, and then the others were in your ammo slot. Maybe if there was an item you held in your main hand which let you throw the javelins from your ammo slot instead.
Technically, the javelins never needed to leave your hand slot in the first place. They could have always just been put there, or used on the ballista to be stored in that, in the much same way that darts were put into a blowpipe. This was discussed at the time, but the dev overseeing the quest project felt that would be a bit more complicated, and the javelins would still never be used, much as they never really had been in the last decade. So we didn't go that way. But it would be possible to go with this approach instead, if we wanted to make javelins useful.
Well, yeah, I suppose that's the thing. I think it's a nice concept, but I wonder where they would fit, sort of in terms of, well, ranged weapons at the lower end.
Now, some of the use for it has been that players do get dropped bronze javelins from loot from monsters, and at the moment they get these things. They're not going to sell for a whole lot, and you can't do anything with it yourself, and it's not worth alching. So you dump it in a general store or drop it. Not much else you can do. It wouldn't be a bad thing to make something that you could do with them instead, even if it's not throw them at people.
Okay. All right. So a hard maybe then, I guess, on that one. What did you think, Mod Oasis?
I think it'd be a cool idea, and I guess variety isn't too bad of a thing to add in. I've just never heard of that thing before. And
Neither did I until I saw
Atlatl.
it, but I loved it as soon as I saw it. Just imagining someone use one looks good.
Yeah, basically just a giant slingshot.
Pretty much, yeah. Our next question is, would you consider repolling the enlarged icons for the spellbook when the filter is used? It failed at 74.7% last time round. If the issue is with PvP, that could be excluded from the change. Yeah, I remember this controversy at the time. It wasn't fun, actually, because I think we polled it a couple times because the wording wasn't quite how we wanted it initially, and then it ended up still failing. I don't know how anyone on the sofa feels about this one.
We were willing, but it's not something we've been really trying to get into the game, because we don't actually have a big overriding agenda involving the size of the icon.
That's true.
So if players haven't been bringing it up a lot, I'm content with leaving the thing alone.
I think this is the first time I've seen it mentioned for a long, long while. I know last year we did a thing, we did a poll based, well, I don't know if it was a specific poll for it or if we just made a point of including questions where things had failed sort of just. Maybe later on in the year we could do something similar.
We have done one or two themed near-miss polls, and a lot of things failed again, and I'm fine with that outcome as well.
Okay.
And there's a few that we kind of regret, like the Wilderness Ditch, but that has not been getting more popular over time.
Okay. Sounds like we'll probably leave that one for now then. Would you consider doing an opinion poll to see what types of content players might be interested in seeing in the future? For example, questing, skilling, bossing, minigames, etc. I like this idea generally. I think we could maybe make better use of opinion polls, well, by which I mean do more of them, to see what you guys want. That said, we have other ways of finding out. So we've got a big annual survey hopefully coming up soon. I think it's still being planned and not quite ready to distribute just yet, but that's also a very effective way of finding out en masse what you guys think. But also the polling system is obviously there. It's just a case of, I wonder how many times a player is going to want to just give their opinion rather than vote on something concrete that they know is either going in or not. But I'm open to that. I think it could be useful.
I like it.
This player sometimes takes the wrong boat from Relica because they're all close together and look similar. Would we consider changing the right-click travel option to say the name of the destinations instead?
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Maybe a nice little signpost as well.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I often run up and like, not the right ship. So you have to run back around to something a bit clearer would be useful.
I suppose the issue with the signpost is how well can we do a signpost that's legible?
It would probably be easier to do the option on the NPC rather than having a signpost to click on separately.
Okay.
Just a big flashing sign.
Oh yeah,
That's
chuck an image on there.
Yeah. Vegas style with the lights flashing around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if the Waterbirth dude had something representing Waterbirth Island next to him, like a pet DK, and the one for Moss Giant Island had a bush to represent the Moss Giants, and and the Nets, Not and Yatis Soap couple had a rock or a small Arctic pine tree. It would be a lot easier to just put the thing on the text like the player suggested, I think.
Okay, sounds like we're in favour, and actually the player's implementation is probably a good way to go about it. Talking of right-click destinations, could we add a right-click last destination option to Spirit Trees?
Normal ones should be all right, but the farming patch ones might be running a bit short of option space.
Okay. I think that sounds reasonable. I mean, we've done that recently with the charter ships. I think that was yours, Tide, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I understand you were planning a potential change to what the last destination was defined as being.
Yes, I believe currently the last destination is the port you're travelling from, but people have suggested that it be the one you just travelled to instead.
Okay.
Which would be helpful if you're doing the same journey repeatedly, but you're not using the charter ship to travel back again, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Is that something we're sort of still discussing or quite set on doing? What do you think?
It would be nice to do it.
Okay.
But it would be nice to see how everyone else, or all the players think about it, whether they prefer the new, how it is now, or changing it.
I've seen reasonable support for making this change.
Okay.
I suppose it really depends on whether a player's going back and forth on the same charter ship or whether they're doing the same journey repeatedly but teleporting when they've got to the destination, which seems more common to me.
Could the...
We could use a straw poll if the thing works on that platform you've got there. Thank you.
Could the Wyvern shield be changed to charge up the same way as other Visage shields? Currently it's only charged with fossils or numalite, which costs around 500,000 gold for a full charge, which is overpriced compared to the shield's limited uses, says this player. I don't know how much the chat agrees or what people think on the sofa.
I've got no opinion on that one.
Okay.
Sorry, Bruce.
I don't feel strongly about this one either way. I don't really use it myself.
I'd have been concerned that there wouldn't be a whole lot of uses for numulites in any quantity if this one stopped being one.
Okay.
And the players don't seem all that keen on it either.
They do
How
not.
handy.
Okay. Could Turiel's dialogue be shortened? Currently, there are 9 chat boxes to click through when skipping a Slayer task via NPC contact. I don't know if that's true, that's just what the player has said, but it does sound like a lot.
The thing about getting a task off those Slayer Masters is that normally you'd want a right-click option for doing it on the NPC, which you'd use. The spell, on the other hand, is not so convenient. Maybe we could change the spell to offer something quicker.
Yeah, I think, is it, what's the top level one called? Duriel?
Duracell.
Duracell Barry.
Duradel, yeah.
Duradel. His one's relatively quick. I think it's only a couple chat boxes you have to go through if you use an NPC contact. So I feel like it would make sense to match them.
Okay.
Nope, there's a battery emote.
The next one I've seen players asking for quite a lot, which is could ham members have their pickpocket option moved to the top of the menu so it's a left click rather than a right click? I know people farm these for, is it for medium clues?
Easy.
Easy clues?
Take the talk to option off of it, then it'll work like all the other attackable ones, where you can just customise which one's on top based on the setting you use for everything else. And they don't, to my knowledge, have anything worth saying.
Okay. We wouldn't be sad about silencing them sort of forever.
We can make them shout abuse over their heads.
Okay, reasonable. All right, some support in the chat for this one.
To compensate for that, make him chuck you in the jail even more.
Okay.
You know how the ham kit bonus works there?
Not off the top of my head.
Oh, it's bizarre. It doesn't affect your chances of being caught pickpocketing. It affects your chances of being hoofed out the room if you got caught. And I'm not sure why. Anywho, cheers.
I guess if you're in the full set, then you're a ham member, so they want to punish you for it.
Yeah, I guess. Like you're pickpocketing them, but they let you off because you're one of us. What nice people.
Could you make the world map remember your zoom in and zoom out distance so that when we open it, open and close it, it doesn't revert back to a default distance? I don't know who's very familiar with the world map code.
Yes, although at the moment it's set to do the default one for the current map, the one that's being loaded, so that if it's a tiny map, it zooms in automatically rather than going with whatever preference you set for a different one. We're not likely to store different preferences for every individual map, but we could remember that if it's the same one that was opened last time the menu was there, it will stick to it rather than changing to the default for that map, I think.
Okay. I was in a meeting with the one of our dev teams, call that one the Unknown, who are working on a lot of the improvements for early game, so the adventure path stuff that you guys might know about, and just various other things like streamlining Tutorial Island, that kind of stuff. And they were talking about improving the usability of the world map, sort of just generally earlier, so maybe that's something to add to the list. Things like, so I don't know if you guys know about this, but I didn't know that on the bottom left of the world map screen, you've got a key that shows you all of the different icons that appear on the map itself.
Yeah.
And then clicking on any icon from that list highlights all of the ones on the map that are the same.
Funnily enough, that goes back to like 2005, before there was an in-game world map, because there was a separate Java applet on the website,
Right.
which you could just open as a separate program itself, and it had world map with those presets 25%, 33, 50, 75, 100 for the zoom, and that overview in the bottom corner, and that kind of key with that kind of ugly flashing effect if you clicked on it. And that's just what RuneScape's world map was, rather than the simple large bitmap that we could download when RS Classic was the game. So when in 2008 they moved that app into the game so that people didn't have to open a separate program for it. Mostly because the HD mode being worked on in those days was full screen without a resizable option, so you couldn't have a separate program open at the same time. Anyway, that's where half that design came from. It's mimicking an old applet that was on the website in about 2005.
Right, so really legacy stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Atlas and I used to have to go through an awkward process to update it every time there was a significant map change in the game.
Could an overall count of total items that you've collected appear in the collection log? So, I've collected 106 out of, I don't know how many there are actually in the collection log in total.
Don't think that can happen in its current state, the way it works. Not without a rewrite of some sort.
Okay, so that'd be quite a big thing. Probably not looking to do that then.
Unless you don't mind clicking on every individual tab for it to have a little counter.
Okay, I see. So probably not then. Another player has asked what the latest is on the clan leader visit announced at RuneFest. So I'd like to give you guys a little bit of an update about this. So we mentioned the clans update that's coming that needs to lay the groundwork for Group Ironman. And as part of the design for that rework, well, as part of the design sort of phase, we're getting a bunch of you guys in. We sent out a clan survey for you guys to give suggestions and feedback on what it might look like and the kind of features that you would want in such a rework. And we're currently going through those respondents. Thank you so much for everyone who has replied to that. And we're currently in the process of selecting people that we thought gave very good feedback and that we would like to invite into the office just to sort of form a little focus group and really hone in on what we might do with the rework. So that's where it's at. It's expected that the visit will happen hopefully next month. That's the plan, but it may drag over into March if things, other things crop up. But that's basically where we're at on that front. What are your thoughts? I suppose Mod Husky would be the best. Oh, Mod Husky is answering this question live on my notepad.
Not creepy at all.
Oh no.
So our next player asked, what are your thoughts on reducing the points given for RNG-based tasks in the next league?
Can you do his accent when you read this out?
No, I can't. Sorry. So I think what the player's referring to is things like getting the pet, which I think getting any skilling pet, I think offers something like 500 points, which was quite a hefty boost, especially in the early stages of the league. So in my own accent, here is Husky's reply that he wrote not 10 seconds ago. He said, yes, we want to do that for leagues going forward and put more focus on tasks which require skill or are challenge-based, which and are less about long and repetitive grinds. So there you go. The answer is yes. Thank you for that, Mod Husky. We appreciate you. Our next question is, could the Slayer partner system be reworked? Currently, it doesn't do much. I know this is a question we've had come up quite a few times. I don't know who wants to field this one.
The reason it doesn't do much is that when we first pitched it, players were terrified that we'd make something massively overpowered and ruin Slayer. So we kept it about as vanilla as it can get, I think you will agree. And if players are now up for it doing slightly more than that, that should be fine. Also, with a relatively recent engine update, we should be able to make the partners persist over logout, which will be rather more convenient for you.
When did the Slayer Partners update happen? I don't think I was around for it.
I think 2015-ish.
Okay.
I remember there being some players visiting at the time. I ended up talking, certainly one of them harangued me outside the Golden Hind pub for considerable time about how dangerous it would be if this thing became overpowered. He had some useful advice actually about making sure that you couldn't use your partner as extra block slots by setting up an alt with very limited quests, so that you could block more tasks by partnering with that person. So we wrote it accordingly. But in terms of, letting you, a kill by either player count towards maybe a shared kill count potentially, that kind of thing should be feasible these days if players are more up for it than they used to be.
Okay. I think the existence of alts probably does make balancing that more difficult. It'd be a case of, are we, even with the shared kill count, that's going to let people breeze through tasks they might otherwise be inclined to skip and instead save their points. So it's kind of a tricky one.
A way around that could be having the same Slayer shop, but a new type of points, and just increment the number of it just by 10 times. And then depending on how many the player actually did more than the other player, well, let me say it again, depending on how many the player killed, they get points accordingly.
Okay.
So if you did most damage on 3 out of 100, you'd get 3 of the 100 points you'd get. That would work around that.
Okay. Well, if we're confident there are ways around it, then I'm all for it. Sounds good. I think this was asked by Torvester on Twitter. He wanted to know if the cap on the ignore list could be increased. There are apparently lots of people he would like to ignore, and possibly some other people as well. So is that something we can do?
Something the engine team could do, although we did ask him for a clan system as well.
Right, okay. I'll move on to your guys' chat questions for now. So again, it's ModSween collecting them. If you have anything you'd like asked, please send them in to the Twitch chat and we'll pick those up. I may touch on another topic towards the end, but we'll see how we're doing for time. Our first player says, thank you for the update on hit point splats. Could we have an update on Ian's other project, resizable interfaces?
Yeah, unfortunately, he didn't get that one to a state that could be completed by anyone who's available. And Atlas did look through what he produced, and while it was a very nice scaling algorithm that could take an image and scale it very nicely, Atlas didn't reckon that it could be built into the game to be done at runtime constantly for everything that the game renders. So I'm afraid we don't have a near complete one of those to finish off. Sorry. I was disappointed too, actually, because I was really hoping we could have got that one. Same for anti-aliasing that he prototyped. I mean, he made a very good screenshot of it, but not something that could be built into the game and launched.
Could you remind me what anti-aliasing means?
You know how if you scale a picture in MS Paint, it looks all blocky. Anti-aliasing makes it not look all blocky.
Oh, okay, right.
For a very rough description.
That seems very related to UI scaling then.
Yeah, he was quite interested in UI scaling.
Right.
Spent a very long time prototyping different things. Unfortunately, didn't get anything we could use out of it.
Okay. On the topic of world map, could it be possible to bind the map to a key? Sounds again like an engine thing. Any sort of extra input doing something different typically is.
I assume we're talking about opening the map based on pressing that key.
That's how I've interpreted the words.
Keyboard key, not a physical in-game object.
I'm assuming as much, yes. There was an engine feature launched not that long ago for something of the sort. We might be able to do this. Not entirely sure, but it might be there.
Okay. One for
of course, we'd have to make sure that it's not a key that you would be using for chatting, otherwise you'll get a lot of maps suddenly. And there was a player asking earlier about whether the skill guides, the in-game skill guides that list all the interesting things you can do with various skills, whether that could be made more like the world map so that it floats over the screen and you move it around and resize it, rather than it being in your face and you every time you try to move or do anything it shuts immediately. The answer is yes, we could.
Could we add a Scotizo claw to the dummy to make it a demon too? It's probably an add-on to the question we asked earlier about putting Vorkath's head on the dummy to make it calculate for Dragonbane weapons as well. So this one would make it susceptible to Arclight.
Let's see, why not?
Sure.
If there's space, probably is space.
With 4 of the things, even if we had to do all the different combinations based on what the player had or hadn't got, that's still not going to multiply up to the maximum number of things you can have in a hotspot, which is 31.
Shame about the port room.
Yeah.
Is there any limit?
Yeah. Well, that's partly why Maz created the Nexus for us, so that we wouldn't be unable to have any more teleports once we hit that limit. Of course, you know what it takes to update the Nexus.
Our next player points out that Zami brews close the bank interface, but divine potions don't, despite them both dealing damage to you.
Yeah, their damage was implemented in completely different ways, and always has been since they were made, as far as I can tell. So I'm having the Zami brew one updated to use the divine potions kind of code instead. It's nothing to do with the bank directly, it's just about interfaces being closed by damage, and the divine potions using a different kind of damage that doesn't do it. So we've changed Zami brews. That's going in tomorrow's update.
Could stackable clues be revisited after the success of the clue relic in Twisted League? I think people have been asking about this a lot. I can't remember the name of the item. Is it the clue box or something that you can put?
Scroll box.
Scroll box that you put loads of them into. I knew that was going to happen as soon as I saw the question. So obviously the chat aren't in favour of this one. I don't know if anyone on the sofa even dare admit that they are, even if they are.
I would like it.
Okay.
I'd like it, but probably shouldn't be in.
Why would you say something so controversial yet so brave?
because
It's true.
I may like it, but they may not like it. So
Okay.
we listen to them. I'm not going to push my own against it.
Okay.
I think it's just a nice thing where if we decide to go with that relic again in the next league, it'd be nice to just have it then again. It makes it special.
I think that's one of the nice things about well, just the whole relic system in leagues is we can bring things back that players liked, and obviously axe ones that didn't so much. I liked the Treasure Seeker one. I know it's not the same as the Clue one, but it was just added so much fun to the game, like seeing people excited to do clues again and wear all their champion gear and stuff. That was great. It's on the iPad, so I'm going to ask it. I don't feel obliged to answer, Ash, but this player is inquiring as to where you purchased your shirt from.
Sainsbury's, which is a UK supermarket. It's not fancy or anything. It was really quite cheap.
There you go. Where will the Twisted League shop be located?
I think it's exactly where the League's tutor always was, in Kourend. Although the idea of having another League's tutor somewhere more central might make sense, especially when the next league is somewhere else. Mm-hmm. There can be more than one of the dude.
I think you're right. Yeah, it's he's at the moment. I think he's pretty close to the statue in the centre of the courtyard outside Kourend Castle.
Yeah.
He's not moving as part of the update, in fact.
What are your thoughts on adding a Recolour option to the Prospector equipment at a cost of gold and nuggets?
What colours? Did they mention any colours that they had in mind?
They did not, no.
Well, it's currently blue. I know you like certain colours.
Do I?
Yeah.
Purple?
Yes. It's come up a bit, that. And I would be genuinely interested to see a lot of people wandering around in pink Prospector outfits.
I think at the moment it's coloured to sort of match the trimmed mining cape. It's the same blue, isn't it? I think.
Oh, is that why we did it? I just thought it was like blue
I assume
overalls.
so. I've just made that association.
Makes
I don't know if it's true. I suppose a Recolour could make it look more like Prospector Percy, who's sort of the red-blue motif, similar to the Prospector from Toy Story. I think that was the
He was
inspiration.
based on. In fact, he was called Prospector Pete until we decided it was a bit too close to Toy Story. I spent a good half an hour at my desk watching Yosemite Sam videos to get the right kind of mindset before writing his dialogue.
Very nice. Oh, that's interesting. It's sort of like a method acting approach to developing, I guess, which is quite nice.
Because I don't normally write prose like that, and couldn't resist at the end of it having a chat option for players saying, "Excuse me, what language are you speaking?"
Excellent.
That Prospector outfit had some of the best graphical feedback I've ever seen given. Matt Kay talking to Mod Reach about the models he'd put together for it, because we didn't actually have a dedicated artist in those days, but Reach turned out to be quite able to make 3D models in the tool. And Matt's feedback was the female version of it doesn't look properly feminine because women have two boobs, not one big one. And Reach obligingly changed it. Best feedback ever.
What are everybody's thoughts on adding a black Recolour to the Phoenix, which would presumably mean a new firelighter? Don't know how you feel about this one, Oasis, after having just made a bunch of versions.
Well, I know what I'm doing now to add another colour.
Am I right in saying you did the actual graphical changes yourself rather than one of the artists?
Initially, and then a mod G came in and touched them up. Changed the colours around a little bit more. I wouldn't be too opposed to it, I guess. I just feel like it would just be inverting the colours on the white version of the Phoenix, and it'd either just be grey or it'd just be too dark to see any difference between the colours, if you know what I mean. Whereas the white, you can see the variation in the white between the greys and the white. So I don't know.
Maybe if you feel like it.
Yeah.
I do like the idea of just completely unlit pixels on the screen, except for the eye, beady red or maybe purple eye glaring at you.
That would look quite cool, actually.
If it actually looked like they've made, of course, the good thing is if we were doing it that way, then you wouldn't have to do all the different shades individually. You just do the whole lot all at once.
Yeah.
And it would probably, I don't think this is how things are meant to render, but it would look quite amusing.
Could players have the option to choose which login screen picture they see? There have been some great login screens in the past which disappear after a short time.
For what it's worth, now we exist on mobile devices, we'd like to keep our downloads small rather than sending lots of pictures to download every time just for the switching between them. And as the game currently works, I think it prefetches all those graphics rather than just getting them on demand when you need them. Change that, we are talking something for the engine team to do, and while I don't think it's a huge job for them necessarily, there's probably better things they could be doing for us, like the clan system that leads to Group Iron Man maybe, rather than reskinning the login screen.
Okay.
However pretty some of those might have been. Of course, we could just leave the pictures for people to download off our site somewhere.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say next. We could just make them publicly available. We do have them all. So, in fact, I think you made a nice page with all of them on.
We do. I do keep that archive, yes.
Okay. This player wants to know if we're working on fixes for our high scores page, as it's been a while since the changes. That's all they said. I'm not really sure exactly.
Context to that one, ever since the boss high scores update, where there were lots more high score tables, the system's been a bit slow. Like you've noticed when you try and load a web page, it's a bit slow.
Yes.
And it also doesn't always receive data when people log out, not as reliable as it used to. Obviously their data is saved because it's part of their save game profile, but their high scores aren't always as updated as they used to be. So, yeah, the tech staff have already been working on it. That's why it's better than it was at the time of the launch. In fact, and quite apart from the dead links that it had at the time as well. I think Mod All-Star pushed a fix for that last week, but it's still not as smooth as it ought to be for loading the data, which is why we're not offering to, do all the other tables that people have suggested, like the Barbarian Assault one or Chompies. Until they've got that thing sorted, I really don't think we should make it worse. Sorry.
Now that you mentioned the boss high scores, it just reminds me of a request I had. I don't know how feasible it is. Are we able to disable those on a particular world if we wanted to?
No.
That couldn't be done. Okay.
Well, the tech staff would have to make it possible, and
Right.
At the moment, it's a bigger priority for them might be the actual performance problem it's struggling with.
Okay.
Quite apart from all the many other things the studio needs from that team, including the security updates that were pitched in the blog in October.
Okay. Well, sorry if that was something you were asking for, but thank you for the answer. Could the collection log carry over from league to league so that players can retain their achievements in some way? I can't necessarily answer this one on Husky's behalf, but I do know that he in particular is very keen on, and I think Flippy as well, are keen on making your league accounts feel more sort of personalised. Obviously your progress is going to be wiped league to league, but there are things which carry over, like your pet, for example, any pets that you've earned, for example. So this might be a nice other thing that you can carry through. I think another thing we discussed was maybe keeping music tracks unlocked if you've played in a previous league, that sort of thing. So if this one's possible, it seems like quite a nice one.
Well, if Husky knows of a way, it might turn up on your tablet.
It may do. We'll see if it does. This player wants to know if we could make granite cannonballs more visually distinct from normal cannonballs. They're very similar. I know the answer to this, but I'll let someone else take it.
Yeah, answer this. What was your answer?
Well, as far as I'm aware, they're not meant to look as similar as they currently do, and that will be changed back very soon. I think it was a recent update that made them appear the same.
Yeah.
Yes, it was Christmas.
Yeah, that was my oopsie. They were originally two different colours. I didn't clock on that they were two different colours. So tomorrow's update, I think.
Yes.
They're going back to granite cannonballs and normal cannonballs.
Okay. Is that at all related to the fact that they change into Christmas puddings
Yes.
Okay.
That's why they changed it all at the
Yeah.
start of Christmas.
Gotcha.
And at the end of Christmas, they were meant to go back to their previous state, but instead they went
Understood.
back to looking the same as each other.
I see. Why are we spamming 1 in the chat? Does anyone know what that's about? I've missed it.
Look,
I don't know.
Okay.
bit of fun, innit?
All right. Well, whatever floats your boat, guys. Okay.
Press 1 if you're having fun.
Oh, there we go.
You have to specify how you're having fun.
Please don't. Hopefully it's by playing Old School. Could we get house storage for Quest Fashionscape, like the slave outfit, eagle costume, robes of Elid? I'm not going to pronounce it.
Elidinus.
Thank you. The plague outfit, camel mask, doctor's outfit, etc., etc.
Yes.
Okay. And our last chat question that we have asks what our thoughts are on adding a team-based Gauntlet, which is currently a solo challenge.
At that point, why not do dungeoneering?
It's so close to dungeoneering at that point, isn't it?
It does look very, very Dungeoneering-esque.
I think I remember at the sort of design stage, we did discuss at length whether or not the Gauntlet should be a solo or team challenge. I think we considered the option of adding a team option, but it would have just meant a bunch more work, and also including rebalancing and that sort of thing. I think the idea instead is, now that we've got, I think it was Mod Lenny who made the Gauntlet feasible at all with sort of randomly generated runes and such. If we were to apply that elsewhere with some sort of, I don't know if it's going to be a dungeoneering-esque type activity or something else entirely, maybe that might lend itself better to a team activity instead. So the answer is maybe at some point, but probably not with the Gauntlet. We'll see. So I think that just about brings us up to just shy of 6 o'clock. So I'm going to wrap things up. I'm going to go over the announcements that we had at the beginning of the stream. So we gave a shout out to Exact and Rendy. Congratulations again to you both for achieving level 3 fire capes. That's very impressive. Watch out for next week's stream, which is going to be dedicated to the Nightmare of Ashihama. The team who have built that boss will be talking all about it and showing off graphics, that kind of thing. Same time as usual, 5 p.m. UTC or UK time on Wednesday. Sign up to our mailing list for exclusive information about the game generally. I think some Nightmare stuff is going to be coming up soon as well in it. You can do that by accessing your account settings and clicking on email and communications preferences. And then also at the beginning of the stream, we touched on what's going to be in next week's update, including the fact that Twisted League is closing at 9 a.m. with the regular game update to follow around noonish. I believe that just about covers everything. We hope you guys have enjoyed the stream. Thank you everyone on the sofa and behind the scenes for joining me here today. We hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful week, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take care for now. Bye-bye.